Our presenter today, Dr. Reginald Parker. You ready? Yeah. Reggie. Do you go by Reggie?
Reggie.
Reggie. Yeah, Reggie. You look like a Reggie. Thank you. He is a little bit later stage than many of our presenters are, which I think is great. And he had the success of winning the Google Entrepreneur competition recently in Durham. I'd like for you to share a little bit about that as well, right? Let us know what that process is like and how they hold your feet to the fire respectfully and in a good way, right, after you do that. So that will hopefully inspire others to follow in your footsteps with those kinds of competitions. So with that, I will introduce Dr. Reggie of Optimal Solar. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
I have the honor of having the scariest talk in the RTP today, at least for fossil fuels. Again, I'm Reginald Parker. 205 people applied for the Google for Entrepreneurs contest. 10 companies were selected. We went through a grueling week. They talked about MVP very little, but VP, value proposition, a lot. And understanding the customer process, the customer discovery process, how do you communicate that and use that to build brand? And that's external and culture internal. We talked about leadership and how leadership was the key cornerstone for what you're doing as a founder. And a lot of us were just solo founders. We were not all co-founders. And from that, that went from Sunday, that's about till Wednesday, and then they talked about how to grow. Guerrilla warfare, just growing by sales, and then if you're taking in someone else's money through angel or the institutional process, what does that mean? What does that mean for you? And what decisions are you going to have to make? What's the impact? Because when you bring someone into the family, you have to make a seat at the table. And we talked about that and understanding that. And then we had it was interesting, a former actor come in and he gave us a really good time on how to pitch and how to actually communicate more effectively. I grew up as a scientist, an engineer, and I never, said, prunes and bananas before talking. But he says this is your voice. You have to warm it up. But he also talked about how to better communicate and what he would do as an actor. And I never thought about it that way, but it actually improved all of our presentations. And then Friday was the pitch contest. And I was fortunate, and I was taken aback, a couple of tears, and I won. But on top of that, Backstage Capital Accelerator, which is a new program from Backstage Capital, they awarded me entry into the accelerator. So in March, April, and May, I have to go out for 3 months. I have to choose of 4 cities, London, Philadelphia, LA, and Detroit, to stay. And my wife is saying, which one are we moving to? I said, I don't know which one you're moving to. She's in the back. That's the only reason I'm making this joke.
She wasn't laughing, by the way.
But it's an intense program, and so, we have to make some very good decisions there. So it was a double impact, winning the Google for Entrepreneurs and then getting invited into Backstage was something I did not expect. And I've done a couple of accelerators, and this was by far, Google does accelerators very well. They have them throughout the world, and they do them often, and you don't have to go through their programs to be a part of the Google for Entrepreneurs. They actually have one here co-located with the Google Fiber. They have a big one out in San Francisco, one out in New York. So they open themselves up for entrepreneurs, especially in the digital space. And being a clean tech person with Google, my conversation to them is that data farms and solar farms go together well. And so, we have a new way of interacting rather than just a digital space company. So that's a little bit on that, okay? So hopefully that was enough information to whet your appetite on that. Right before the competition, we had Florence. And my brother and his wife, 3 kids, 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house down in Wilmington got hit. 2 of the back bedrooms where I forgot to tell you that his wife's grandmother, who has dementia, was also living with them, and her boyfriend, who was just diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and now is on hospice because they found out too late, was living with them. So the 2 back bedrooms were gone. Putting up the rooftop was easy for them, to cover that and fix it out, but they were out with electricity and he needed all of those services. And so he said, man, I wish I had your panels.
Yeah.
He needed the energy, and I'm a little bit away from commercialization. Sometime in 2019, I couldn't help him out, but disaster relief, quick disaster relief is a big issue. But aside from disaster relief, there's more than that as an issue and a reason for solar. Now, bottom line is that the utilities have a fiduciary responsibility of providing their investors the best profit, and to do so, historically, they had to find the lowest cost electricity. At that, if we were able to replace every fossil fuel based system with renewables, we'll save $50 billion annually in human health costs. So there's a great need for solar or other renewables. Mind you, I'm one of these kind of guys that solar is part of the solution, it's not the silver bullet. Secondly, outside of the US, where there are energy users for the developing world, a lot of them use diesel power in order to have reliable electricity. There may be electricity from the grid, but it's not reliable. Took a trip over to Nicaragua, trip to Nigeria, trip to Ghana. Depending on the country is how many times the light will go out in a day. And I was like, a manufacturer would just love this, right? But outside of energy cost to human health and the energy scarcity, there's 1.1 billion people who have no power access at all. So these are 3 whopping powers. And we know that energy, electricity, and GDP are heavily correlated. So without electricity, there's very little economic development. I mean, when the lights go out, you have to be home, and you have to live by candlelights. And in South Africa, they have a lot of issues with girls not having hair because they fell asleep next to a candle. So there's all kinds of problems, and I'm not going to get into all the problems that developing world has. What I want to get into are the solutions. And the solution is basically clean, affordable, reliable energy solutions. So Optimal Solar cares, and this is the program that we're looking for, right? Optimal Solar has a patent pending, proprietary, third-party tested solar module that we're looking to put with utilities and facilities. And in doing so, we hope to improve, at the end of the day, the levelized cost of electricity, because if you can't provide electricity at cost equal or less than that of the grid, the utilities have a fiduciary responsibility to provide the highest profit to their investors. That's the truth. Every company has that. And so our technology is based on, 1, capturing up to 60% more electricity than standard fixed tilt, concentrating more than twice that of regular concentrated PV, and converting 2.5 times more than that of a regular panel. And we do that through this process. We capture more, we concentrate more, and we convert more. And we convert, as you see those 2 little things, we split the light. Visible goes to a chip, Infrared goes to another chip, and both of them are PV. We use the infrared as photons, not as a thermal source.
Tell what PV is.
Say that again?
Tell everyone what PV is.
Photovoltaic. So the technology is real basic. We call it VIA based on what happens. And this is a little cute animation, VIA. All right? And so what we do with VIA is, look, I'm by training, I'm a theoretical chemical engineer. So I can see photons. And in doing so, I grew up in manufacturing with Roman Haas, and we contract manufactured almost everything. So I went back to what I knew: contract manufacture. Find somebody who was good. So if you see the device over there, it looks like a reverse LED. So I went and found one of the best LED guys that was U.S. based, but had global footprint. They're in the U.S., both coasts. They're in Italy and they're in India. And so I felt really good about my global footprint. And with my value chain, I'm able to get up to a gigawatt, but we're nowhere near that in orders. But I wanted to make sure the supply chain was there. We then sell into customers, and those customers are utility providers, large developers, and industrial. So basically utilities and facilities that we can go into. And right now the global market is at 65,000 megawatts per year. We hope to get to about 2% of that almost 7 years from now. And in doing so, we've made some steps for 2019 and 2020 to find projects that were comfortable for us to put our modules in. And so we have a large project out of Haiti with ANARS that we're bidding with and bidding for, and a equally large project in Atlanta that we're trying to develop right now. So, not only are we trying to sell the panels, but we work with the developers and the folks to get it done, because these are our first sales. Once we lock in, we believe we'll be just like any other panel manufacturer and be able to sell into the market just like any other panel manufacturer. Now, because we split light and we use heat or infrared more efficiently, we believe that the South and the Southeast and the Southwest, we believe equatorial climates and desert climates are going to be where we are way more competitive than the 83% of the panel cells that come from Southeast Asia, right? We're way more competitive because, I even have a solar farm up in Gaston, North Carolina, not Gaston County, Gaston City up in Northampton. And when it gets hot in the summer, 25% of the efficiency goes away. In our case, the efficiency will go up. So, as an example, if you needed 750,000 kilowatt hours a year, the one on the left is what you would need for traditional solar, and you'll get a price of about 7 cents a kilowatt hour. For hours, you need 2/3 of the space, and the cost at 6 cents, just under 6 cents, where Lazard estimates that for natural gas at 6 cents. So we're at or just below without subsidy. Here's my team. I'm the country guy on the top. I met most of these folks while in school or society, engineering societies. For my team, I've been blessed to meet Mark while I was at First Flight, John on a project that was up in Virginia, Doug over at American Underground with the Google project. Alan, he's been a mentor for years, MIT grad. So that's my mentor. Then my protege, now my advisor, Keith, he's a Bainey, so I'm able to talk business with him. One of the smartest guys I ever met, Ray O'Neill, he's a solar physicist. And then Amanda, She seems to know everybody, and for a PR person, that's what you need. And so they lovingly give to Optimal Solar because they believe in what we're doing. So with that team, with Google, First Flight, and a variety of others, we stand to be able to deliver in 2019 this new product to the market, and moving into the backstage accelerator in 2019. So we're continually building our networks and the brand. And my call to action, what I need from you guys, and the best thing I can think about is look, sales, as they say, cash is king. If I can get to procurement officers, if I can get to facility managers, I can better understand what they need to understand to solve their problems. A lot of them think about solar as a CapEx. I think of it as an OpEx. You're paying an electricity bill. Can you find another way to pay that electricity bill and for it to go away within 4 to 5 years? And it'll actually be at or lower without increasing on a year-to-year basis. So these are some of the things that I think about, but also I want to know what's on your mind in doing so. So now I always try to make sure you're able to reach out to me. I'm just, again, the country boy right around the corner at First Flight. I'm fairly easily to contact. Email 510 Nano. I should have put optimalsolar.energy. 510 Nano spent off Optimal Solar. And so my board of directors at 510 Nano know that I'm just moving to the board exclusively. They'll bring in new management for 510 Nano, and I get to be the geek that I want to be in launching this particular product. So that's all I have for today. Hopefully I wasn't too quick and that you have a lot more questions.
Okay, we'll open it up for questions now. Because we're on the bridge and acoustics is really weird. If you even stand would even be better.
So we had a local startup right around the corner by the name of Semprius. You may or may not be familiar with them. And if I'm not mistaken, they actually had the record. They had concentrated photovoltaic cells of like 41% efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Chinese market started producing these things so cheap that they basically went belly up. What's different about this that's going to allow you to compete with the cheap products that are coming out of China?
Just had that question from a Moroccan solar provider that's interested. Two things. First, the only proprietary functional technology is the module. All right, and even with that, it's really the part that I didn't bring in the module is the monoblock where all of the activity happens. Almost everything else, even inside of the module, I can buy commercial off the shelf. Okay, and I call it my IP3 strategy, patent, proprietary. So when these things are manufactured, I've already paid the manufacturer not to make it for anybody else but for me. And the third is the partners I've chosen. I've chosen the biggest partners I can possibly get so that as anybody started knocking off or trying to compete, they will work with me. And the last part is that every 18 to 24 months, a new part of this technology will grow. So now that answers the last part of your question, which is how do I continually compete? But if they were to drop prices, I look at this as a systems cost. And right now, it's $1 per watt for Chinese panels, not for the Chinese panels, but for the whole system. And they're at about 34 cents a kilowatt hour. And they're going to drop another 20% over the next 3 months. And this is an anticipation on whether or not a 30% ITC is going to withstand December. So you can take the price of a panel to zero, and we're still competitive. The reason being is two things. Number one, per operating square footprint, we produce 90% more electricity. So the dollars per kilowatt hour is fixed in there for a system so that we're producing so much energy, we actually have space to spare. With the project I showed you on the rooftop for 750,000 kilowatt hours, I didn't talk about how many watts. The one on the left was a 500 watt system, the one on the right was a 300 watt system. So I need less panels to be able to compete. So our difference between us and Simpria is they had a lot of proprietary technology, even the tracking module. I can use tracking off the shelf. Only thing I'm concentrating is on that, and almost everything else is interchangeable for what you can buy today. And I did that because I'm a former developer. I'm a reformed developer, right? And in doing so, I understood that the only way for them to make profit is that the cost of energy was substantially lower than the PPA, one, and two, for me to stay in business, I had to be inoculated to tax credits and Chinese panels. So, taking from my Roman Haas background, I went to all of my folks and said, you are my partners. And for us to compete, you can't overly profit off of my back, because once the Chinese lower their price, we're all out of business. So I beat them down on price. Those are all the things, I just did, simple business analysis. What does the system cost? What is the cost of electricity? How do we compete given what we can do? And what will happen in the market? Now, I haven't, of course, thought of everything. I'm smart, but not that smart. That's the reason I have a whole bunch of advisors. And, this is the result of our thinking. How do we, one, become competitive, remain competitive, and even get more competitive? Those are our three things. Yes, sir.
I have a question. This is related to barriers to entry and your pricing model.
Mm-hmm.
I came in, unfortunately, midway through. So it sounded like your pricing model is that you actually buy the equipment outright?
I have a contract manufacturer that handles all of that for me.
Okay. Because
So,
my question was going to be, had you considered a model where they lease the equipment?
End user, the end user.
they can do whatever. I'm just selling the modules.
Gotcha.
Right. I've gotten out of the financing business for this particular structure. When you're doing projects, building solar farms, you have to, you're much more than just a builder. You're a finance company. And that becomes a very difficult model. My strength is in, as I joke, is seeing photons in technology, commercialization. And I think that for my investors, I'll give them a lot more if I just compete head to head as a panel manufacturer, as an OEM, just putting products out there. So I model myself like Nike, right? Technology and marketing are my strengths, and I do that. My contract manufacturer and the installer, that's their game in terms of how they sell it. They just have to buy it from me. And when they buy it from me, they're going to get the best value. Yes, sir.
In regards to the unit itself, I know you don't have that many years into this project. Well, what's your lifespan on that? What's your estimated lifespan?
30 years. Everything that we did, like for instance, what you're looking at on the outside is a PMMA, polymethyl methacrylate. And the PMMA, the way that this is built is such that it's UV stabilized. So you won't see any UV degradation. The thickness on it prevents sag for about 35 years. Anodized aluminum, and the block is another aluminum block, and all the materials within it can withstand up to 600 degrees C. It gets probably 250 degrees C in the monoblock. So I mean, we went through every piece that you can think of, and we know the regular lifespan in several different operations. So we're putting the lifespan easily at 30, 35 years, and we have a AM Best insurer who will give us a 25-year warranty on the, insurance on the warranty.
Have you partnered to take a look at battery stores to store and then sell back into the grid?
I'm pushing the developers that we're going to be selling into to do that. I just want to be a pure play. I'll make recommendations, but if I step into that, then I'm stepping into the developer's shoes again. And then the first thing that they're going to ask is, can you finance? And so then I have to move away from innovation and get into finance. My MBA, I did concentrate on finance and international finance, but that's a whole different beast. People usually look at me as a PhD geek, not a finance head. So, let me lead with my geekness. I do that pretty well, at least my wife says I do.
Does he?
I let her pay the bills.
Other questions? We got plenty of time. Yep, right here.
Okay, so.
Oh, okay. I'll see Kay, we'll come back up. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Okay, so following his question, so energy storage is very important.
Yes.
At nighttime, so the product cannot conserve the energy. So how do you have some solution? How do you make the solutions?
Electron doesn't know who his daddy is, right? And so just like any other energy system, solar, wind, or what have you, they all can use storage. So I'm not trying to solve the storage problem. There are brighter people who understand the chemistry of storage, right? What I'm trying to do is solve how do I get the most out of the photons that are falling to the earth, right? And within 49 minutes, I think the current number is, we get more energy from the sun than we use throughout the year. So if I can get more energy into a smaller space at a cheaper cost, then somebody else will be able to, in fact, let me give it to you differently. Haiti right now pays 36 cents a kilowatt hour and higher for electricity. We pay 12. If we're able to produce the energy at 4, 5 cents a kilowatt hour, then you can buy storage at 10 cents, and now you're at 14 cents. And that's very close to the 12 cents that we pay here, right? So I'm making room for storage. I can't solve the storage problem, but I can make it a lot easier. I think
There was one right here.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I had what, so the module is where the IP is at,
Mm-hmm.
and then you filed a patent that's gonna publish at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Have you thought about, can somebody, I don't know what you patented, versus what's proprietary, but could somebody reverse engineer it and manufacture it?
They can try.
Okay.
It's not that easy. And then if they reverse manufacture and try to sell into the markets that the patent, then I have a certain amount of strength. Secondly, the companies that I'm working with will be as interested in fighting that battle with me as I am. So, that was the IP3 model. I'm a country guy, and I know that when I go to a fight, bring my brothers and sisters, and I'm the youngest of 6. My mom is the youngest of 13. My dad is the oldest of 9. So when we come, so I'm not going to go to that fight alone, is what I'm saying. I'm sorry to put it that way. And you had a question.
So is the IP in that you're using essentially 2 modules to gather the heat in one, and then the actual solar exciting the cells between? Are you using monocrystalline? I'm imagining.
Not using silicon at all. We're using 3.5. Now the thing is, a lot of people have tried.
Right.
To do this, right? And as I said, our nearest customer, nearest competitor, when they concentrate, they're about 700x.
And you're talking just on the PV side.
Right. Well, everything is PV for me.
Even the heat?
Infrared photons.
Right.
Still is an infrared photon
But it's
chip.
a completely different conversion, right? I mean, you're
It's
converting.
around 22, 23% efficiency.
Right.
But it is a photon to electricity
Mhm.
activity.
Okay, so it's not because there's a like you can reverse the module on a refrigerator that takes electricity and makes things cold. You can take that and make heat. You know what I mean?
Yep,
It's the
yep.
difference.
Those are very inefficient.
Right.
And I don't
so
know
you're
how to
not
make
using-
them
so
efficient.
So you're not actually. You're really just optimizing for the shorter wavelength and the higher wavelength.
Mhm.
And you have two PV cells then.
Right, so let me put his question in a different frame. A lot of people have tried to solve this problem, and they tried to solve this problem with materials, right? And so they'll stack materials that absorb and transfer the electricity of photons to electrons as efficiently as possible. But once you stack it, then you get a lowest common denominator, right?
Right.
In terms of current, right? The optimal current. And so things that can actually make higher current can't, because they have to go to the lowest current, which is the germanium on the bottom,
Yeah.
right? So they've tried 3 levels, 4 levels, 5 levels, and they push it and
The
push it and push
inefficiency's
it.
all the way down.
But so I said, screw the materials, let's just do the optics,
Okay.
right? I will send the light to the material that can convert it at the highest possible efficiency, and overall I'm gonna get higher efficiency.
Right.
And so the chip that transfers the visible light into electricity, it's doing that in excess of 53% efficiency. And it loves it. I'm not sending in infrared,
Right.
because when I send the infrared, I need something to absorb the
It
infrared, turn it
overheats.
into electricity. And so, and when I do that, then that whole system in and of itself reduces efficiency for 2 reasons. One, that germanium at the bottom doesn't have the same current as everything else. And 2, now it's absorbing more heat and the efficiency goes down. So I never send the infrared in, it never has that problem.
So I guess that's incredible. But is the IP in the entire system of splitting, and then or is it
Right.
actually in the cells? Because
Be-
sounds like
because
you can
I'm
get
able to
those
split
cells.
the way
Right.
I'm able to split,
Uh-huh.
I'm able to get the concentrations that nobody else is able to get to. That's one part of the patent.
Yeah.
Number 2, when I split and how I split and all of those things, a lot of people, when they were splitting, they were not able to control the optics, and so things were going all over the place. In fact, let me see if I can quote it. They said, we were not able to get beyond 40x because our systems fried. Right? So, I mean, this is a quote,
Yeah.
something that made in a journal. And so if you can't control the optics, you fry the components. And so, there's a lot more nuance there than just, just that we split it. But we control the optics. This is optical management and heat management
Right.
versus material design.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for the explanation.
Steve? Yeah.
Good morning. Could you talk about how much money you've gotten in either dilutive or non-dilutive funding, and then what your plans are for raising money in the future?
Okay, so the parent company put in around $417,000 for this. Backstage has agreed to do another 100. We're talking to some investors who are doing a quasi-equity round of about $2 million for the Series A, which is later in 2019. But right now we're just doing the C stage, which is about 500. It doesn't include the 400 that has already come into the company. So we got 100 of the 400 of the 500. So we're raising the other 400, and we have some strong leads for that as well. Did that fully answer your question?
I'll get more information from you later on.
Okay. So we're raising money. We've gotten 400 so far. We got 100 already committed. We're looking for another 400. Once we get past that, then we raise for the larger projects that you see that I talked about, which is our Series A.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I'm trying to tease out, the disruptive aspect I see of the ability to be more efficient at what's existing, and I can see where you fill the same base, I guess, as solar panels. But then the disruptive part, there's something inherent in that would give you a comparative advantage relative to others, and it sounds to me like it's equatorial regions. And if
And
that's-
deserts.
And deserts, okay.
And hot
Okay.
spots.
And because I was thinking like Mexico City would be an
Mhm.
excellent example
Mm-hmm.
where you could actually disrupt
Mexico City, Nevada, Arizona, California, Texas. I mean, look, I grew up in Savannah, Georgia. Savannah. And you note with the design, because this was the first time that we ever showed the design publicly. The reason we did that versus a flat Fresnel, Fresnel lens, when you come in at an angle, it goes right back out at the same, it only can handle. This right here allows us to get diffuse light. Yes, sir.
So, is it, am I assuming correctly that you can produce the same or more energy using less square footage of a surface that these are mounted on? Is that
Right. So, yes.
Okay. So then, you talked about OpEx versus CapEx. So if you're going to go to developers of either multifamily housing or industrial who have large roofs, or multifamily housing that has smaller roofs, probably one way to approach this with those folks, because they're the ones who are going to want to make the money on the long run on the back end,
Right.
based on leasing of the property. So, how do you go to them and talk to them about the initial investment? Because the main problem with solar panels, plus I think you're going to have to partner with somebody for storage. Because people are going to want to know that there's a complete solution and they don't have to go find it. You have to do their thinking for them in that business to some degree. So if you come to them with a complete solution that illustrates the CapEx and then where they can potentially, get their own payoff with a certain amount of roof space, because they also have to reserve roof space for other things, water towers, HVAC units, all those kinds of things. I think that could be, a way that you take this to market and show them, your expenditure and your amount of roof space can produce this, and then you can show them how the cash flow works based on the energy that's produced and stored. So I think that would be the way to approach the real estate market, because this seems really interesting, and, because the biggest problem with solar panels is the initial investment. Nobody wants to make it. So if you can show them, like a Toll Brothers would be perfect for this, because they do both single-family homes and they do multifamily in more urban markets. So, that to me would be the way to approach this.
Well, because of tracking, I tend to not say this is a residential product, but for big rooftops like this, no problem. Then, on that storage thing, the people that we really sell to are the installers. So we're trying to get the installers to say, look, your folks that you're going to be selling to in the facility market want storage, right? And so you gotta force the hands of the installers, because the installers want to do what's quick and easy. Put solar out there and go into the next installation and not have to worry about the storage. And so, that's a hard nut to crack, right? Because my customer is not going to be the customer discovery, yes, to understand what the procurement officers are going to need, the facility managers are going to need. Those are not my customers, those are the end consumers. The customer is the installer or the developer. And I got to make sure that they're doing the purchasing of the batteries. Because you can have that, then you're going to need the thing that holds that, which is the you see now? See, I've stopped thinking about them, right? But the 2-axis tracker, you have the cabling for it, you have the inverters, you have the transformers, and the batteries, right? So either I have to become an installer and think through all of that, or I can just be a pure player and make sure the person who's buying mine is actually solving the problems of the facility managers. And one of the things I can do is says, look, as a subcontractor to you, I'm a minority certified business. This will help you because these companies, they have a DBE, MBE, diversity business spend. They want to spend this amount of money. They'll rather spend it on lowering their electricity than on getting toilet tissues. You know, I mean, let's be real here, you know. So I have to push that, and what you're saying is exactly true. You have to solve their CapEx versus OpEx. A lot of banks these days will finance something like that because if you can already pay your electricity bill, you can finance it at the same cost. So, you know, the upfront capital is solved through a finance problem that banks are now willing to finance. 5-6 years ago, not as much, but this year, yeah, Wells Fargo, they're looking for ways to rebrand themselves, and they're doing a very good job. You know, they started back in the 1800s and started again this year.
Okay, we have time for one more question, then I think it was you.
So you talked a lot about the distributed aspect, residential, industrial buildings. What about utility scale? Is that a key focus for you going into your commercialization?
Yeah, it's easier to sell one big 25 megawatt system, you know, panels of systems than 25 1 megawatt. So, you know, utilities want to buy at scale.
It's a different approach, very different.
Yeah. I've been talking to about three major utilities in the Southeast, and you know, and they then have done very good by me by having me to talk to their major developers. And the developers, it's a real good conversation. I'm a reformed developer. I can speak to talk, or talk to speak, whichever way. But thank you very much.
Yeah. With that, we're going to open it up to community